Hello and welcome to OneNote and OneDrive, managing your data and optimizing your syncing. My name is Nathan Austin. I work with the sales and marketing team and help clients adopt technology and align it to their business. I'll be presenting today, and Megan is behind the scenes doing the producing and managing the Q&A panel. So one of the things I always like to start the session with, we are going to run through about 30 minutes of content, including a demonstration. And at the end, we're then going to open it up for questions. So don't wait till the end to put questions in. However, please use the Q&A panel and go ahead and start posting some questions in there. And if Megan can answer them offline, she will. But chances are we want everyone to hear the questions. So chances are we'll just be opening those up basically at the end of the initial session. Okay, so with that said, I'm excited about today, even though it seems kind of basic that we're just talking about OneNote and OneDrive, but there are some nuances to it. You know, as it's evolved, I've definitely experienced personal frustrations with how my old OneNote notebooks and my new ones and how it integrates with SharePoint and Teams. So we're going to talk about some of those nuances, but then I'm going to show you some of the ways in which you can find those details out and then work through it. So the purpose of this session is we really want you to learn how OneNote and OneDrive work together and some tips and tricks. It will also touch on how Teams and SharePoint integrate to that mix, but the main thing is going to be at OneNote and OneDrive. We're going to hit on some of the common nuances and problems to solve, trying how to make it easy for you, and to maybe avoid some of the pain and pitfalls that you might experience if you're not familiar with at least some of these nuances. And then, as we always do in these sessions, we'll dig into a demonstration and we'll show you some of the different variables of OneNote and OneDrive. We'll look at the web, we'll look at the desktop application, and for those, the little spoiler alert or a precursor or foreshadowing, for those of you, if you're listening or watching today, I am going to try and highlight with my mobile, even though it's going to be hard. I want to try and have you follow along if you have the applications of OneDrive, OneNote, and a surprise one of Office Lens installed on your mobile device. So if you want, and you don't have them installed right now, again, you don't have to, but go ahead and install those through this session, and we'll try and walk you through some of the cool, a couple little tips and tricks to be able to use on your mobile device. Again, if you're interested, but you don't have to. Then we'll end it up with some Q&A and some next steps as we go along. So, always, we talk about 1 minute about MyTech. We are a business and technology consulting organization. We are not, our goal is not to be a training company. That's not the point. The point is to be able to help our clients use the tools that they're already paying for, and hopefully get some greater return on investment by using those tools better and aligning them with their processes. So over the 20 years of us being in business, we've learned a lot about technology and what works together really well. It's not the only way to do it. It's just one of the ways in which we found to do it that we know can deliver proven and consistent results for our clients, which in the end, for you, that means that there are problems that you don't have to worry about. And we understand that technology is not the only problem you deal with. So we hopefully that enables you to spend more time serving your customers better and being more adaptable to the other challenges that we all inevitably face. Our team's goal is to make IT easy for you. Doesn't always make it easy for us, but that's the point. The goal is to make IT easy for you. And by putting all that together, we've realized that our clients can achieve 4 times more value and productivity from their IT investments. If you'd like to learn more about that, give us a shout. We'd love to talk to you about it. Otherwise, that's not why you're here. So let's dig into the OneNote and OneDrive, managing your data and optimizing your syncing. Okay. This is a quick summary, then we're going to dig into the demonstration. Okay, so OneDrive and OneNote, the way they work together. One of the challenges is that when you use Teams, because when you create a team, you're also creating a SharePoint site. There's a different way that OneNote integrates with Teams and SharePoint versus when you're using the personal chat. So there's some capabilities there that we'll walk you through and we'll show you with regard to how Teams and SharePoint and OneNote and OneDrive work together. It's just, again, it's something we want to help you have some awareness about it so you can make the decision as opposed to which is the best fit for you. Next, there's also differences between a personal OneDrive and a company OneDrive. So we're going to show you that. and also show you how you can manage some of those details in case that's something that applies to you. I know that I have an old personal account that I had that I've had since before some of this stuff with Office 365 and Microsoft 365 came out with Teams, and so there's some old legacy stuff that I have to deal with and struggle with that might apply to some of you listening in. So that might help you navigate some of these waters. Additionally, accessing it via the desktop, web, and mobile. So there are some nuances between which way in which you access these tools. And so we'll show you some of those, as far as also being able to manage the account access and the different accounts that you might have to navigate, again, between the personal and the company. Then I'm going to switch over to mobile. One of the things, if you haven't heard about Office Lens, it's a cool tool, and candidly, I don't know if you have to have it installed for it to enable one of the functions I'm going to show you, but OneDrive uses this function of Office Lens to be able to do some uploading, and I know it saves me a lot of time when I'm just capturing receipts at the store. If like maybe it's a personal receipt, I bought a piece of equipment that I want to make sure I keep that receipt in case I have to return it, or a receipt that I have to, like a reimbursement receipt that I need to make sure that I submit to our accounting team at the end of the month. Or I just had a whiteboard session and I want to take a picture of it and crop the image and save it. There's just different things you can do with OneDrive and Office Lens that are pretty cool, and I'll show you how that works. And I'm going to do it live in some of that syncing, so I'm hoping it works as well as it should, and that I don't run into any technical difficulties. But you know what, live demos, that's what they're about. Okay. So that's what we're going to go through, and I'm going to try and walk through this relatively slowly because I know I have a tendency to speak quickly. So I'm going to try and walk through the demo slowly. So another quick reminder before we dig in: if you want to download these applications, I tried to get the images that you will see if you go to the App Store or to the Google Play Store or whatever, the different stores where you can get your apps and download them. This is what the OneDrive one looks like. This is what the Office Lens icon looks like, and this is what the OneNote icon looks like that you should see in the mobile if you're interested in downloading those. Again, you don't have to, but I just thought these are the three that we're going to really talk about, that we're talking about today, and like to share with you. So. And now we'll dig into the demonstration. So I'm going to go ahead and start into my browser window. So one of the things that I always like to do when I'm talking about Microsoft 365 is just office.com. If you go to office.com, you'll have access to all of your applications to which you have access. And if you don't see it here, there's a couple different ways, like you see OneNote here and OneDrive. You don't see Office Lens here, and I don't know if Office Lens exists on the desktop. Let me try and click that. Since I don't see Office Lens, I'm going to look for it. And there's two ways to do it: either the All Apps link here, also the waffle up here. I like going to the waffle, and then I like clicking on the All Apps link here because then it presents all the apps in a alphabetical order. So in Office Lens, as I kind of expected, it's not a desktop app or a web browser app. It's only a mobile app because it's specifically designed to be able to, and I thought that would be the case, but I'd never actually looked until just now. It's specifically designed for your phone to be able to take pictures and do some synchronization with that. So anyway, that's where you can find all your apps. So I've clicked on OneDrive here, and this is actually pulling up my corporate personal account, because there's a OneDrive personal account that's just associated with me and not associated with any organization or entity, and then there is a corporate personal account, which is similar to your My Documents. So the old way where you used to redirect your My Documents on your desktop, that was basically OneDrive has started replacing that. You can even see how my OneDrive includes my desktop. So things that I save on my desktop, even though that's not best practices, but Microsoft has started with Windows 10 integration, started making desktop synchronize with your OneDrive. One of the reasons why I like to show this is because here's an example of the web version of OneDrive. Here, if you notice, there is a notebooks folder. That's there by default. So when you click on notebooks, it's actually going to bring up shortcuts to the different notebooks that I have shared with a couple colleagues. I'll show you where these are momentarily, but I like to show how in the web version of OneDrive, you're also able to access those. And if I wanted to click on one of these, it'll also open it up in the web. And so I have access to the OneDrive, the OneNote version of that via the web browser. One of the other things that I'll highlight here when you talk about the web browser and is that when you're logged into the web browser in your office at home, and if there is a way, I haven't found it, but I tried to break it just to see if it could be done or if it was something that you might have to deal with. But when you're in the web browser version of OneDrive or OneNote, what I found is that you are only logged in to the account, like say if you're logged in as your corporate entity, right? So this entity is our MTP 365 account. So I'm logged into our demo mtp365.com account. And so the only information that I'm able to see here are OneNote notebooks associated with my mtp365.com account. Whereas when you get into the desktop or the mobile apps, you actually can add multiple accounts. So for instance, if you're on a board of directors or if you're sharing, if there are other files that are being shared with you from external entities, or if you have a personal account that you want to be able to use on your mobile, you can do that on your mobile or the desktop app, but you're not able to do it in the web browser. Again, kind of a public service announcement there, but normally you'll see this in the desktop application, and I'll show you how to do that. But just I like to call that out because normally you'd be able to click here on your name or your profile, and you'd be able to add accounts or manage your accounts that way. But because I'm in the web browser, it's only accessing the MTP 365 account. Okay, this is one of the one-on-one notes, and I'll show you that that I've actually added into Teams. I'll show you where I've done that. So I'm actually going to go ahead and click onto Teams really quick, and I'm going to go to chat. Notice the chat is a different, it's a specific section. So the OneNote notebook, so I'm going to click down here again just to illustrate. I've opened up the Gerald one-on-one notes. All right, so the way this is synchronized to my web browser is in the chat with Gerald. I'm clicking on that. I went to this plus icon and I created a new notebook, but I've already added it as a tab. So I'm going to click on this here. So right now, this is the same one-on-one notes. And notice I just added July 14th, 2020 notes. I'll add another note here really quick just to illustrate how it syncs. Adding another note for demonstration purposes. So this is where if you can add it in Teams, and so you can access this information via Teams, and this is syncing via my personal corporate, or maybe it should be corporate personal. I'm not sure how you want to delineate it, but it's basically my corporate, but my account OneDrive. So that's how this is syncing, and so I'm going to go back to the browser, and I'm hoping that it has synced already. And it has. Adding in another note for demonstration purposes has already synced to the web version. So this is a way in which you can access the same information. You can access it via Teams. The other thing you can do via Teams, if you click on this little icon right here, so for instance in Teams, a lot of times if you ever see this little web kind of icon, it says go to website, it's going to open up OneNote in the browser. So basically with one click, it was able to open up this into the browser. So it works really well. So one of the other things that I want to show you relative, so this is how it integrates when it connects to, when you have added it into a Teams chat. So I'm actually going to show you really quick. I'm going to go down to my, I just opened up my File Explorer, and I've got my different OneDrive. So this is my corporate OneDrive. This is my corporate personal OneDrive, and then I also added a personal, my personal OneDrive account for illustration purposes. So since I just showed you the Gerald one-on-one notes, I'm actually going to pull up my OneDrive Control. So this is my personal corporate account, and I'm going to click on the folder that's there by default, which is Notebooks. And notice Gerald one-on-one notes is right there. So these are the multiple ways in which I can access these one-on-one notes. So I can do it within Teams, right? So I've got this. This is where I created or added this chat. Not the chat, the OneNote notebook. I can go to the Office.com browser, and I can do it via my OneDrive in the browser. I can also, if I clicked here, I can open up just OneNote here. And notice Jira one-on-one notes is also one of the ones that makes readily available to me. So there's multiple ways in which to access that. But the key thing I wanted to show you relative to the OneNote and OneDrive is that when you've created a OneNote in a Teams chat, like I did here, it's synchronizing with your local, your kind of personal Contoso or your personal corporate account, and it'll exist in your notebooks folder. So you'll be able to see that. Everyone should have that by default. So now that is the kind of the Teams and the chat and the local personal OneDrive. So now I want to show you if you go into, in fact, I'll go into Teams and I'm going to go into a team chat here, or a team channel, excuse me. I'm going to pick on the marketing team. So I'm going to go to the general marketing team, and I'm going to add, I don't think I've added the OneNote metrics to this yet, if I recall. I know I haven't done it down here, so I'm gonna go down here, sorry, change advisory board. So I do not have any extra tabs added here, but I'm gonna go ahead and click on this plus icon, and click here, and I'm gonna click on OneNote, excuse me. And notice when you open that, it gives you the first option. It's going to say the change advisory board notebook. I'm in the change advisory board team, right? And I want to add a OneNote, and it's going to say, hey, this is the default team notebook. So I wanted to illustrate that because instead of having to create a new notebook, by default, every time you create a team in Teams, it also creates a SharePoint site, which I believe everyone is familiar with, and it creates by default a team notebook. So I'm going to go ahead and click save on that, just so it adds it into the tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the browser, and I'm going to show, well, here, let's actually add some notes here. So let's call a section name like test section for demo. I'm going to call that, and we're going to go first page to sync, just for the sake of the conversation, and notes. Okay, so now I'm going to go down to the browser, again at the office.com site. I'm going to select SharePoint. I'm actually going to right click and say open a new tab. So I'm going to do that. So here I've got my new SharePoint tab. I'm going to go to the Change Advisory Board group, right? So this is the team site that I was just on in Teams. And as I click on that, you'll notice the default navigation here on the page is, one of the items is Notebook. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that over here, and that should show, hopefully, the test section for demo, first page to sync, and the notes that I just added in Teams. So it's a little unknown thing because I don't think a lot of people use OneNote via the SharePoint, but when you create a team and a site, and it creates a site, it's also creating a default notebook to be able to be used inside of that team as opposed to having to create a different one. Now, the other thing that you'll notice, so change advisory board notebook, I'm going to go back to my OneDrive, and in my notebooks, it doesn't show up here. The reason why it doesn't show up here is because it doesn't use your personal OneDrive to sync. When you're using OneDrive via inside of Teams or inside of SharePoint, that it's just syncing between Teams and SharePoint. It's actually not syncing down to your local OneDrive account. It's not using your kind of personal corporate OneDrive to do the syncing. So you won't see it here. That's really one of the reasons I wanted to illustrate it, so you didn't get frustrated and think, well, is something not working right? No, it actually is working correctly. It's just the difference of whether you're creating and using OneNote in a team, in a chat, excuse me, versus in a team channel or the SharePoint site itself. So just know those differences. So now we've talked about it in Teams, in the OneDrive, and in the browser, but let's go to OneNote itself. So I've got OneNote down here, and I just happen to open the marketing team notebook, and I'm actually going to go ahead and add, I'm going to go have more notebooks here because I just accessed the Change Advisory Board notebook. That's one of the things that I have found as an idiosyncrasy with the OneNote application is that if you click on that here, I'm going to cancel here. If you click, so when you click on, if this isn't the notebook that you want, you can click on this little drop down, and then it gives you the option for more notebooks. Click on that. And if you don't see it here, in fact, as I was preparing for this today, I wasn't seeing something, and I'm like, I know I've got that notebook, and it turned out that because I hadn't edited it in a while, I hadn't accessed it in a while, it wasn't showing up. So that's a little trick, is that if you aren't seeing it here, go into your SharePoint site or go into your team site, wherever you might have access to it, and just make a quick note or an edit. And guess what? When you come back to the More Notebooks section, you're going to be able to find this. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and I'm going to add it. And so now again, this is my OneNote application locally, right? So, and of course, demos, it always takes a moment for those things to sync. So that's syncing and opening that. And again, that's just one of the little idiosyncrasies as far as if you're using the local OneNote application to be able to pull up all your different notebooks. Now I've got my corporate ones, so the change advisory board, my marketing team, board of directors, and then you've got my the one-on-ones that are based the chat. The other thing that you're going to see is their color coding is that the purple notebooks here are actually synced from my corporate. These are teams. This is a personal one, my corporate personal one. These are part of my corporate personal one. Notice they're gray or kind of a brownish color, depending on how it comes across on the screen. And notice this one's a green. It's because I actually added a personal one in there. And so you get a little color coding to see where this shows up. One of the things I also want to show you, because now we're going to create a new notebook. So you say you're in your OneNote application. I know I'm going kind of quickly here. Hopefully I'm explaining things enough. Click Add Notebook here. And notice new notebook name. I'm actually not going to add it right now for the sake, but new notebook, but it doesn't give me any other options. So I'm going to hit cancel. One of the reasons I want to show you is because if you remember when we were in the browser, I couldn't access any account information. It only allows me to access my mtp365.com account. So I'm going to show you in OneNote, if you come up here to the little breadcrumbs, you can actually click on settings. And then there's this little account setting here option. So I'm going to click on accounts, and I'm going to say add an account. And I'm going to choose this one because I've already got one that added and set up ready to go. So I add that. So now that account is added. Double check that by going into the accounts. You can see I've got now both of these accounts are there. Go and close out of this. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go back to, so I clicked on, I wanted to add a new notebook. So if I'm already in the notebook, I don't have that option down here. So if I want to add a new notebook, I got to click on this. And now I'm going to go down here to add a notebook. And you'll see now that I added a second account. So let's say if this is a personal account or a different corporate account or some other account that you might need to use for your day-to-day work. When you create a new notebook, it's going to ask you, well, for what account? So I can choose which account I want to create the new notebook under because it will sync to the respective OneDrive account, right? So if I want to have it here, this is going to sync. So I'll say this is my personal notebook, personal notes, and I'm just going to say create that there. Oh, okay, that's great, demo. Thank you, demo, for failing. But you get the idea. I won't bother to create that at the moment, but you get the idea is that when you're choosing to create one, if you only have one account, you do not see this option, but if you have multiple accounts, you get to choose which notebook, because that is going to be, you want to be aware of that so that if it is a business account, if you will, or for your main corporate account, you want to put it under that file because then it'll synchronize to your corporate OneDrive, it'll synchronize to the SharePoint, it'll get backed up, all those things, versus if you have a personal account that you're using that you don't want to have access to corporate, etc. So just be aware of that as far as how that works. Let's see, just double checking my list here. Did that, knowing to log in. Okay, so I actually am going to go now, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So here's what I'm going to do, and for those of you who want to follow along, I'm going to switch over here to my mobile. So we're going to switch away from this screen here in a moment, and I'm going to try and go like this and hold my mobile up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to illustrate what Office Lens can do. So notice I've created a couple folders down here, a pictures folder and a reimbursement receipts folder. Is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a picture of a picture. And I'm going to save it, have it sync here, and then I'm also going to take a picture of a receipt, like for a reimbursement receipt. Notice there's nothing in here now. I should show you that, right? Oh, there's some Looks like there are some Office Lens photos already. Here, there's nothing in the photos, so I'll use the photos and the reimbursement receipts. So I'll use photos and reimbursement receipts. What I'm going to do is I have this all connected on my phone, and I'm going to use Office Lens as it integrates with OneDrive to take a picture and automatically save it, and it'll sync to these respective folders. Okay, so Megan, go ahead and switch away from the total screen and just have it on me. So one of the things that I've done for everybody is I've actually downloaded nearly all of the mobile applications from Microsoft. They're all free. So if you see, I've just happened to download some of them. We're really going to be looking at the ones that are right here. I've got OneNote, OneDrive, and Lens here installed. Okay. I'm actually going to click on OneDrive. Actually, no, I clicked on Lens, excuse me. I clicked on OneDrive, and here's what I want to do. I'm going to just navigate to that that pictures folder that I mentioned. Here, I want to get to my personal one here. I'm going to click on the photos folder there. There shouldn't be anything there. Notice that folder is empty. And I'm going to go ahead and click so I can take a picture of that. I'm hoping that's right. Forgive me, I'm just moving away from the screen now for a second. Taking a picture. Now what it does is when you take a picture using Office Lens, it gives me the option to crop the picture. So if it's if it's angled or folded or bent or anything like that, I can actually crop that, which is really cool. Then I can crop it and select that I'm done. I'm actually going to rotate the image because it was showing up incorrectly. Yep, I'm good with that. And now it gives me the option to save it. So when I've done that, it allows me to automatically save into the respective folder, and I can name it. So I'm going to say picture of George Harrison. Yes, that George Harrison. I actually met his sister at an event one time, and she gave me like a little picture. Not an actual, I didn't get a picture, but gave me a little picture. So I just click save on my photos, and there it pops up. So I'm going to pull this up. Notice it pulls it into a PDF. I'll just open it up in Edge. Up, that's good. So now this is the picture that I just took, and it's synced to my OneDrive. And so Megan, I don't know if you switched back and forth, so forgive me as I'm kind of bouncing back and forth. I'm going to do another thing, so I'm going to show you real quick since it's probably hard to see the demo on the. So I'm going to now go into the reimbursement receipts folder. I'm going to take a picture of this receipt in OneDrive, and I'm going to hold that up to the screen here in a moment. It's all good. Receipt for accounting, and I could call it, lunch or something like that, right? If that's what, and I can date it. So lunch on 7-14. So now I just click save with my finger, and hopefully it's going to pop in there any second. There it goes. So now this is synced back, and I'm opening that. This is a receipt. Need to submit to accounting. So this is how you can use. And Megan, if you haven't already switched back, I want to ask you to switch back to my just me really quick if you can. So one of the things that happens is there's this little, and it's so hard to see, I know. It's this little icon right at the bottom that looks like to take a picture, right? So it's got this little camera icon in the bottom, but basically you just come in here and you select the folder that you want. So you just click on one of the folders, and then you hit this little button. And once you click on that button, it basically allows you to take that picture and then saves immediately right into that folder. So what I used to be able to do with this, now Megan, go ahead and bring it back to the full screen, and I'll bring it back to the presentation here. What I used to have to do is, because I would take a picture and of the receipt, it would save to my photo folder, and then I would sometimes remember, sometimes forget to go in there, email the photo to myself. Then I would go through my email and I would right click and I would save as, I would open it up and save it as whatever it was, like lunch or, bought breakfast or whatever that might have been for the reimbursement. And I would save it into the respective folder. That's if I would remember. And so then I saved it as pictures, emailed it to myself, opened it up, saved as, and moved it over. So I had a 4 or 5 step process. Whereas by using OneDrive and Office Lens on your mobile, you can actually basically make that one step. You take the picture, save it in the right folder, and you're done. And it automatically syncs back to your folder, into your OneDrive folder. So I really like that feature. It's a little known detail, but if you haven't learned that tip and trick, if that's something you need to do, I also do it even for personal receipts. I go to Home Depot and I buy, a piece of equipment or something like that, and I want to save that receipt. I do the same thing because I'll always forget it. So I'll either just email it to myself and then I can save it, or if I'll just, before I leave the store, or when I get in my car, I'll literally take a picture of the receipt and save it into that folder so that I don't have to worry about it losing the receipt or whatever. So it's a cool little feature that you can do with OneDrive and Office Lens, because you can even connect that to a personal account. So quick summary, and then we can open up for Q&A here in just a moment. So be aware there's a corporate OneDrive, or in a corporate personal account of OneDrive, and then there is a personal account of OneDrive that you can have, which is also free. And so that's one of the tricks with OneDrive, and it's important to understand that, because as you start using OneNote and some of these other functions, teams will by default, if you're in a channel, or a team or a channel, it's gonna open up OneDrive in SharePoint, and it's not gonna sync to OneDrive. It's gonna use the Teams and SharePoint integration to be able to do that. If you're in a chat and you create a OneDrive, it's actually gonna, or OneNote, excuse me, it's gonna connect, it's gonna open it up and synchronize it via OneDrive. And you can do that on your mobile device or on your desktop or laptop. Finally, the mobile applications. Take a look at those. They work really well. You can add multiple accounts to the mobile applications as well, so you can navigate between multiple different corporate and or personal accounts and your folders and syncing. Just be aware that it's a little bit different to do it, but it does work really well. So that's really the summary of today. Hopefully that was helpful in just understanding some of the nuances of OneDrive and OneNote and how it works with Teams and SharePoint and mobile, because they are all subtly different. So if there's any problems that you identified today that you'd like to go back and look at, write those down. Recognize that some of those issues might be issues that apply to your team if you're collaborating and using some of the team collaboration tools, and some of them might just be something you personally want to deal with and fix or clean up. Try and take some of those baby steps in the next 24 to 48 hours, because that'll help you leverage some of the short-term memory. Of course, the session is recorded, so you can access that at a future date as well. And finally, please join us for future virtual trainings. We're doing these once a week. Additionally, we have monthly power user sessions. Those are for the subset of folks in the organization that you really want to help understand a little bit more of how this stuff works together, so that you're not creating structure that you end up having to kind of reverse and roll back. And then we also have some just open sessions, general Q&A for regular team members and just folks that are trying to use Microsoft 365. So join us for those. That information will also be available in the email that we send out after the session, including a link to the recording. So thank you very much for attending. Again, my name is Nathan Austin. I love doing this and helping people use the technology that they're already paying for and trying to take advantage of it for better return on investment. For those of you who have to drop off, thanks for joining us, and we'll send that out. For those that can stick around, Megan, I'd love to open it up for questions.
Thanks, Nate. Yeah, we've got a couple questions here. The first one says, I accidentally deleted the notebook's default folder in my corporate OneDrive account when I was organizing my files. Is there a way to recreate this default notebooks folder to ensure optimal file path syncing, or a best practice around when to save OneNote notebooks?
That is a great question. So, first of all, this gets into a good public service announcement detail around SharePoint and Microsoft 365. If you are a client of MyTex, you most likely, again, depending on how long you've been a client, we have a secure worker program that is that we've had for a little over about 2.5 years now. If you are part of that program, then your Microsoft environment is backed up. So we should be able to recover that for you, so you don't have to worry about trying to recreate it if you accidentally deleted that. If you aren't subscribed, if you're not a client and you aren't subscribing to that program, Microsoft by default, and I've never tried to restore this using just the default Microsoft backup, but Microsoft keeps version history and information around for 14 days. So if you deleted that less than 14 days ago, you might be able to go back and restore your OneNote. That would be the most likely the two best ways to be able to recover the default kind of notebook that comes along with your team site. As far as recreating it, that is a great question, because one of the things that I looked at, when you go to the home menu of any particular team site and you click on the new in this little drop down here, it doesn't give you the option of adding a new notebook. Unless, I've never tried this, so forgive me as I'm kind of winging it here a little bit. I believe maybe the app, I wonder if it allows, let me see if I can, I'm just do a quick search for OneNote. Nope, it doesn't look like that's the way you'd be able to do it. So let me go back. That's not what we want to do. So yeah, that's great question, because I don't know, other than just restoring it, I don't know, recovering it from backup or restoring it from either a third-party backup or the default kind of 14-day backup that Microsoft has. I think that's really the best way to do it. I mean, you can create, the other thing you can do, and maybe this would be the way to do it. So this might be the best way to do it. So I'm going to try this. Let's say those two ways don't work. I would come into your I would come into a team, and this isn't necessarily going to recreate the default notebook, but one of the things which I really love about how Teams extends the ability to kind of create this stuff and manage these details down to the folks that are using it day to day. So if you're an owner or a member of this team, I would try and go ahead and add, if you have the permission to be able to add tabs, I would try and add a tab. I would go to OneNote, and let's see if this does this. So I'm going to create a new notebook, and I'm going to call it new cab notebook, cab for change advisory board. And let's see what this does. So I know that by saving that and creating it inside of the team, it is by default going to apply permissions and access to this notebook to anybody who's a member of this team. So if I right click on this, on the little breadcrumbs here, and click manage team, so basically now that I've got, these are the folks that are members and guests of this team. When I created that new notebook, it is inside of Teams. It is automatically going to apply the permissions and allow these people to have access to that notebook. So that's one of the beautiful things, as opposed to creating the notebook and then trying to add permissions to it. Creating it inside of Teams, like I just showed you, will automatically apply the permissions to these folks. Now, what I don't know, and let's find out together, it's one of the things I love about this, is like, let's try it and figure it out. So as I'll go to the browser, and I'm going to go, again, I'm going to go back to the office.com. So I'm going to go to SharePoint. I'm going to open this up in a new tab. It's one of my favorite ways to access that. So now I've got SharePoint up. I'm going to go to the Change Advisory Board group, because that's the team that we were just in, right? For your call, we're in the Change Advisory Board team. So I'm going to go to the Change Advisory Board group here. And let's see. So yeah, it doesn't give me, I'm going to click on this notebook, but this is not, yeah, this is not the one that we created. This is, so it doesn't link it there, but let's see if we can. I wonder if we can, gosh, there's got to be a way to do it, because you can always link stuff. I bet you could create a link. There's ways where you could create a link inside of these details. You should be able to add links. Again, I'm not the power. We're going through some of this stuff. We went through some of this stuff in the last power user session, which was last week, and we're going into more how to edit SharePoint and do some of the things we were just talking. I'm trying to do here that I'm not very adept at doing, candidly, into the next power user group, which is in early August, once a month here. So, but that would be the way I would do it. So to start, I would say that restore from backup, again, whether it's a third-party backup or Microsoft. But if you accidentally deleted the notebook that's built into the navigation, I'm going to cancel this stuff. Discard changes. Yep, I'm good with that. If like the notebook that's built in here to the change advisory board, I don't know how to get that back per se. There might be an administrative way to do that. But definitely, if you're trying to get that back, or at least create a notebook for the team, you can go ahead and just add the notebook here inside of Teams. And I'll show you now that I should have access to that. If I'm one of the users, I can go into OneNote and I'm going to click here and say, I want to look at more notebooks. I should see one of the first options should be that I'm hoping that it does is that notebook that we just created. So I'm going to click here, more notebooks, new cab notebook. So that does give that access to me right away in my desktop application and in the Teams application, but it might take a little bit more work to link it or to provide a link or access in the navigation inside of SharePoint itself. So probably a longer answer than you needed, but hopefully that covered our bases because I wasn't sure what your options for recovery might be.
Thanks, Nate. The next question here is, if I add Notebooks tab to Teams, do all the notes sync to Teams? What if I only want to share one note and not all of them?
Okay. Say that again. I want to make sure I follow along here. Sorry.
Sure. It says, if I add Notebooks tab to Teams, do all of the notes sync to Teams? What if I only want to share one note and not all of them?
Okay, so I think, so if you added, like, so we just added this notebook, and we are in the, so we're in the team site, right? So we're in the change advisory board site. So as we said, that automatically applies anyone who has access to this team will have access to this notebook. What that gives them access to, and I'll use Teams as an illustration, because you'll see that there are features that don't exist here, and then I'll show you the features here down in the one. I'll show you the features down in OneNote to show you the difference. So there are features that do not exist here. So for instance, when you share the new cab notebook, it'll only share the respective sections and pages inside of that notebook. Okay, so now I'm going to go back by illustration to illustrate what I mean. When I'm over here, I've got all of these other notebooks that are here, right? So when I share that, anything inside of this notebook, notice I don't have that option. This option doesn't exist when I'm in Teams. So I'm going to go back to Teams. That I don't have this little drop down to choose a different notebook. It only gives me access to this notebook. However, when I'm in OneNote will allow me to navigate and add or have access to any of the notebooks to which I have been granted permission or that I have created. So I think that answers the question. And the same thing applies to, by the way, the team as well as the chat. So I'm gonna go to the chat, for example. You know, I have Gerald and Stephanie. I've added Stephanie one-on-one notes, for example. And because I created this notebook inside of this chat, it's syncing from my OneDrive, or it syncs to my OneDrive, my personal corporate OneDrive, to be clear, and it only allows Stephanie to have access to it. So it doesn't allow her, but it only gives her access to, again, the notebook that is any sections in that notebook and any pages of those sections in that notebook, but nothing else. So I think your question was asking something slightly different, but I think that answers what the problem you're trying to solve. Is that I don't believe you can share just a page. At least I don't think. You know what? Let's try it real quick. Because let me go to this really quick. I'm gonna go to the change advisory board. I'm gonna pick a different one. Excuse me. So this one's got a page here. I wonder if I can just share. There is a share button up here. Looks like you might be able to send a copy of the page. That might be the way you could do it, because you can choose here, just like when you're sharing a Word document out of OneDrive or something like that. But what I don't know, and I would test this before you do it, is I don't know if this shares just this page, or if it shares just this section and any pages, or if it shares the whole notebook. I don't know the answer to that question. Again, it says send a copy of a page, so to me, that means maybe it's only sending this page. So I would try that. I would test it out, and I know it's not going to work very well based on this is the demo computer, and I don't have other stuff set up on here, but try it. Otherwise, I think that the default action is that when you're sharing it, you're sharing at the notebook level, not at the section or the page level. But this might allow you to be able to share just a page. But I've never tried it, so I would test it before you roll it out anywhere.
Thanks, Nate. It looks like this is our last question.
Okay.
Could you please clarify how to create a personal corporate OneDrive account?
Okay, great question. So I'm going to go to the browser. Go to office.com. So when you, by default, if you have a Microsoft 365 account, so if you log into office.com and you click on OneDrive, because you should see that, that is your personal corporate OneDrive account right here. So I'll click on that, and you'll notice that in the notebooks section, as I mentioned earlier, because this is, I should only see the notebooks that are part of the chats or ones that I've created, right? I don't see any of the team related notebooks here, right? So, and I'll also illustrate that by going to the File Explorer. So for instance, when you see OneDrive dash company name, so if you go to your File Explorer, like usually have a folder icon, you can, right click and say File Explorer, just click on it, and it'll open it up. You'll see that there are OneDrive dash Contoso. This is your personal dash corporate, and it'll know it because it'll have your corporate name. This is the Contoso demo environment that Microsoft allows us to use. So that's why it's named Contoso. Now, and then if you see this, so where it just says Contoso or your company name, and it's got the little building icons next to it, that is any information that you're syncing from your corporate SharePoint site. So for instance, notice this change advisory board documents. I'll navigate to that folder to show you what I mean. So I'm going to go to the web browser here. I'm going to go to the change advisor. I already have the change advisor over to group up. And I'm going to click on the documents here. Notice the change advisory board documents. I clicked sync. And so I'm going to go back to my File Explorer here. Oh, darn it. I need to show taskbar. So I'm going to pull up my File Explorer here and go back to the browser. Sorry about that. Okay, so if I click on Change Advisory Board Documents here, I should see these folders. Client engagement, general, primary application, process, right? So when you see the building icon and the company name, if you've chosen to, and you won't see this, by the way, unless you've specifically gone into a SharePoint site, like one of your company SharePoint sites, and clicked sync. Once you do that, it creates this, it'll add this little building icon in Contoso to designate that this is syncing. This is your corporate OneDrive, where it syncs your corporate SharePoint site files versus your corporate personal OneDrive. Notice it says OneDrive dash your company. That's where you'll see your other notebooks. So short answer is, if you have an account, you have a corporate personal OneDrive. So that's the short answer. Longer answer is, just know that when you log into office.com and you click on OneDrive, that's how you have access to it. And if you want to, and the corporate account is only going to be accessed if you click sync on a SharePoint site. And this is how it's designated in your File Explorer window. You'll see company name, OneDrive dash company name, and this is the personal account that's just not associated with any corporate entity. This is just an account that Microsoft allows you to have personally. So these are the things that you might see. Any other questions?
It doesn't look like anything else has been posted, Nate.
Okay. Well, great questions. Thank you very much for attending and listening. I know this seemed to be kind of basic, but it's something that we know that there are just nuances and idiosyncrasies between how OneNote and OneDrive and the web version versus the desktop application versus the mobile application all work together. And hopefully some of the tips of syncing the reimbursement sheet, that was a huge time saver for me. And I probably made sure that I didn't lose money because I was actually getting the reimbursements that I should have gotten, because otherwise I'd forget. So anyway, thanks very much for attending. We'll send out an email with the survey. That'll be a Microsoft Forms survey. We'd love your feedback on any future content you'd love to see, how we did on this session. Please share this and join us on other sessions. But in the meantime, make it a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.